Fran Cruz sat in the sterile waiting room, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her purse. At 60 years old, she had lived a full life, raised 4 children, and watched 8 grandchildren grow up calling her Grandma Fran with pure joy in their voices. But today, everything would change. The words stage 2 lung cancer echoed in her mind like a death sentence, especially when 3 different doctors had already told her the same devastating news. There's nothing we can do. The tumor is too large, too close to your aorta. You should just enjoy the time you have left. But Fran wasn't ready to give up. Neither was her family. Her children refused to accept that their vibrant, energetic mother would simply fade away. They had seen her strength through countless challenges, watched her fight for everything she believed in. This wouldn't be any different. Somewhere out there had to be a doctor willing to fight alongside her. Someone who wouldn't see her as a hopeless case, but as a woman worth saving. That's when they heard about Dr. Kim, known in medical circles as Dr. Miracle. His reputation preceded him: lightning-fast surgical hands, an unwavering determination to save lives others had given up on, and most importantly, a heart that refused to abandon hope. If anyone could help Fran, it would be him. But would he take on a case that 3 other specialists had deemed impossible? Every day matters when you're fighting for your life, and every story of survival gives hope to someone else who needs it most. If you're facing your own battle or supporting someone who is, this story is for you. Subscribe to hear more incredible journeys of medical miracles and the doctors who make them possible. The journey from despair to hope was about to begin, and Dr. Kim was about to prove that sometimes miracles happen when you refuse to give up on the impossible. The morning started like any other in Carson City, Nevada. Fran Cruz was preparing breakfast for her husband when a persistent cough that had been bothering her for weeks suddenly produced something that made her blood run cold: specks of blood. Her children had been urging her to see a doctor about that cough, but Fran, like many of her generation, preferred to tough things out. This time was different. The chest X-ray revealed what everyone feared, but nobody wanted to say out loud. Dr. Peterson, her local physician, studied the images with a grave expression before turning to face Fran and her daughter Sarah. "Mrs. Cruz, I need to be direct with you. We've found a mass in your left lung. It's significant in size, and I'm concerned about its location." The word cancer hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Fran felt the room spinning as Dr. Peterson explained that the tumor was pressing dangerously close to her aorta, the body's main artery. "We need to get you to an oncologist immediately," he said, his voice carrying the weight of urgency that medical professionals reserve for the most serious cases. Sarah squeezed her mother's hand as tears began to fall. At 60, Fran should have been looking forward to retirement, more time with her grandchildren, maybe some travel. Instead, she was facing the fight of her life. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had never smoked a day in her life, yet here she was with lung cancer. The next few weeks became a blur of medical appointments, CT scans, and increasingly grim prognosis. The first oncologist, Dr. Martinez, reviewed her case thoroughly before delivering devastating news. "The tumor is extremely large, and its position makes surgery virtually impossible. We're looking at palliative care to keep you comfortable." The second opinion wasn't any better. Dr. Roberts at the Regional Cancer Center shook his head as he pointed to the scan. "See how close it is to the aorta? One wrong move during surgery, and, well, the risks are simply too high. I recommend chemotherapy to slow the progression, but we need to be realistic about outcomes." When the third specialist, Dr. Thompson from Reno, delivered the same verdict, Fran's family felt their world crumbling. "I'm sorry," he said gently. "Sometimes medicine reaches its limits. Focus on making memories with your family." But Fran's daughter Michael, a nurse herself, wasn't ready to accept defeat. That night, she sat at her computer until dawn, researching thoracic surgeons, cancer treatment centers, and experimental procedures. Her mother had always been a fighter, and Michael wasn't about to let her give up now. The family gathered that evening, 8 grandchildren ranging from toddlers to teenagers, all sensing something was terribly wrong with their beloved Grandma Fran. As she looked into their innocent faces, Fran made a silent promise. She would find a way to fight this disease, not just for herself, but for all the birthdays, graduations, and precious moments she still wanted to share with them. Michael's research led her down countless internet rabbit holes, medical journals, and patient forums. Every search for inoperable lung cancer and large tumor near aorta seemed to lead back to the same name: Dr. David Kim, known in the medical community as Dr. Miracle. His reputation was legendary. A thoracic surgeon who took on cases others wouldn't touch, with surgical skills so precise they seemed almost supernatural. Dr. Kim worked at University Medical Center, one of the country's leading cancer treatment facilities. The stories Michael found were incredible. Patients given weeks to live who were now years into remission, surgeries so complex that other doctors called them impossible. But what struck her most was how his former patients described him, not just as a brilliant surgeon, but as someone who genuinely cared, who saw the person behind the disease. "Mom, I think we found him," Michael announced to her siblings during their nightly family conference call. "There's this surgeon, Dr. Kim. He specializes in exactly your type of case. People are calling him a miracle worker." Fran's son David, ever the skeptic, wasn't convinced. "Mike, we've already seen 3 specialists. They all said the same thing. What makes you think this doctor will be any different?" The strain was showing on all of them. Weeks of devastating news had taken their toll. But Sarah, the eternal optimist of the family, felt something stir in her chest: hope. "What do we have to lose? If he can't help, we're no worse off than we are now. But if he can..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. They all understood. The process of getting an appointment seemed insurmountable. Dr. Kim's office was booked months in advance, and they didn't have months. When Michael called, explaining their situation to the receptionist, she expected another dead end. Instead, she found compassion. "Hold on," the receptionist said. "Let me talk to Dr. Kim's team. We sometimes have cancellations, and your mother's case sounds like something he'd want to review immediately." 2 hours later, the phone rang. Dr. Kim's surgical coordinator had reviewed Fran's faxed medical records and CT scans. "Dr. Kim wants to see your mother next week. Can you make it on Thursday at 2 p.m.? The family erupted in a mixture of excitement and nervous energy. This was their shot, their one chance to find a doctor who wouldn't give up on Fran. But what if even Dr. Kim, the legendary Dr. Miracle, looked at her scans and shook his head like all the others? Fran spent the week preparing mentally for another disappointment while secretly nurturing a tiny flame of hope she was afraid to acknowledge. Her grandchildren sensed the tension but couldn't understand why Grandma seemed so sad lately. 8-year-old Emma climbed into her lap one evening and whispered, "Grandma, are you sick? I can help take care of you." The innocence in Emma's voice nearly broke Fran's heart, but it also strengthened her resolve. She had to fight, not just for herself, but for all the moments she still wanted to share with these precious children. As Thursday approached, the entire family prepared for what could be either the beginning of a new chapter in their fight or the final confirmation that they were running out of options. The University Medical Center rose like a beacon of hope against the morning sky as Fran and her family made their way through the massive complex. Unlike the small, cramped offices they'd visited before, this place hummed with energy and purpose. Researchers hurried between labs, residents discussed complex cases in hallways, and everywhere there was a sense that impossible things happened here daily. Dr. Kim's office was different too. Instead of the typical sterile medical environment, warm lighting and family photos of former patients created an atmosphere that felt more like visiting a trusted friend than consulting with a surgeon. When Dr. Kim entered the room, Fran immediately understood why his patients spoke of him with such reverence. He wasn't the intimidating, cold specialist they'd expected. Dr. Kim moved with quiet confidence, his famous hands steady and sure as he shook each family member's hand. But it was his eyes that captured Fran's attention. They held intelligence, yes, but also something that had been missing from every other consultation: genuine hope. "Mrs. Cruz," Dr. Kim said, settling into his chair and leaning forward slightly, "I've reviewed all your scans and medical records. I know what the other doctors told you, and I understand why they reached those conclusions. But I want you to know something. I don't see hopeless cases in my practice. I see puzzles that need solving." For the first time in weeks, Fran felt her shoulders relax. This man wasn't preparing to deliver another death sentence. He was preparing to fight. Dr. Kim pulled up her CT scan on his computer screen, but instead of pointing out why surgery was impossible, he began explaining what he saw as possibilities. "Yes, the tumor is large. Yes, it's close to your aorta. But close isn't attached, and large isn't inoperable. It just means we need to be smarter, more precise, and more creative in our approach." He outlined his treatment plan with the methodical precision of a master strategist. We're going to start with a specialized chemotherapy regimen designed to shrink this tumor. I have a colleague in Reno who specializes in the exact protocol we need. Once we've reduced the size significantly, we'll reassess for surgery. Sarah couldn't contain herself. Are you saying you think you can operate? Dr. Kim's response was measured but confident. Mrs. Cruz, I've performed surgeries that other doctors said were impossible. I've removed tumors from locations others wouldn't attempt to reach. What I'm telling you is that I believe we have options, and I'm willing to explore every single one of them. The room fell silent as the magnitude of his words sank in. After weeks of hearing impossible, inoperable, and nothing we can do, they were finally hearing, I believe we can help you. But Dr. Kim wasn't finished. I need you to understand that this won't be easy. The chemotherapy will be challenging, and if we do proceed with surgery, it will be complex and carry risks. But I also need you to know that I don't give up on my patients, and I won't give up on you. As they left Dr. Kim's office that day, Fran felt something she hadn't experienced since her diagnosis: actual hope. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine seeing Emma graduate from high school, watching her grandsons play college football, being there for all the moments that had seemed lost forever. Dr. Kim wasted no time implementing his strategy. Within days, he had coordinated with Dr. Patricia Santos, an oncologist in Reno who specialized in the aggressive chemotherapy protocols needed for Fran's case. Unlike the palliative treatments other doctors had suggested, this regimen was designed with one goal: to shrink that tumor enough to make surgery possible. The treatment was brutal. Fran's first session left her nauseated and exhausted in ways she'd never experienced. Her famous thick hair began falling out in clumps, and her energy plummeted. But every 2 weeks, when she returned for her next treatment, Dr. Santos would review her progress with barely contained excitement. "Fran, look at these numbers," Dr. Santos would say, pointing to blood work results. "Your tumor markers are dropping significantly. The treatment is working exactly as Dr. Kim predicted." Meanwhile, Dr. Kim maintained constant communication with Dr. Santos, adjusting protocols when needed and monitoring every aspect of Fran's response. His surgical team began planning for multiple scenarios, studying her scans like generals preparing for battle. The hardest part for Fran wasn't the physical symptoms. It was watching her family struggle with fear and uncertainty. Her husband tried to stay strong, but she caught him crying in the garage one evening when he thought no one was looking. Her children took turns staying with her during treatments, each trying to hide their worry behind forced cheerfulness. But it was her grandchildren who gave her the strength to endure each session. 9-year-old Marcus drew her pictures to hang in her hospital room. Teenage granddaughter Lisa wrote her letters filled with all their future plans together. "Grandma, when you're better, we're going to have that girls' shopping trip we planned, okay?" After 3 months of treatment, the moment of truth arrived. Dr. Kim personally reviewed Fran's latest CT scan, comparing it to the original images from her diagnosis. The change was remarkable. The tumor had shrunk by nearly 75%, pulling away from the aorta and becoming, for the first time, surgically accessible. "Mrs. Cruz," Dr. Kim announced during their consultation, "we're ready to schedule your surgery." The words hit the room like lightning. After months of hoping and fighting, the moment they'd all been working toward was finally here. But with opportunity came new fears. Surgery meant risks, bleeding, infection, complications that could be worse than the cancer itself. Dr. Kim sensed their apprehension and addressed it directly. "I won't lie to you. This will be a complex procedure. We're talking about 4 to 6 hours in the operating room, possibly longer. But I want you to know that my team and I have been preparing for your case specifically. We've studied every aspect of your anatomy, planned for every possible scenario." He paused, letting his confidence radiate through the room. "Fran, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've seen patients in worse condition than you make full recoveries. I've performed surgeries that other doctors said were impossible. Most importantly, I've never stopped believing that we could get you to this point." As they scheduled the surgery date, Fran felt a mixture of terror and hope that seemed to define her entire journey. Everything they'd worked for, everything they'd endured, led to this moment. Dr. Kim had kept his promise. He'd given her a fighting chance. Surgery day arrived with the quiet tension of a gathering storm. Fran had barely slept, spending the night alternately praying and mentally preparing for what could be her last day on Earth. Her family filled the waiting area by 5 a.m., even though her surgery wasn't scheduled until 7. They needed to be there, needed to send her into that operating room surrounded by love. Dr. Kim arrived early, as was his custom. He found Fran in pre-op, already changed into her surgical gown, looking smaller and more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. But her eyes still held that determined spark that had impressed him from their first meeting. "How are you feeling, Fran?" he asked, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "Scared," she admitted honestly. "But ready. I trust you, Dr. Kim. Whatever happens in there, I know you'll do everything possible." Dr. Kim nodded, understanding the weight of her faith in him. "Fran, I want you to know that my entire team has been preparing for this day. We've run through every scenario, planned for every possibility. When you wake up, that tumor will be gone." It wasn't a promise he made lightly. Dr. Kim had spent years building his reputation on successful outcomes in impossible cases, but this surgery would test every skill he'd developed. The tumor, despite shrinking significantly, was still intimately close to critical structures. One small mistake could be catastrophic. As they wheeled Fran toward the operating room, her family gathered around her stretcher for what could be their final goodbye. Her husband kissed her forehead, her children whispered words of love and encouragement, and her oldest granddaughter slipped a small cross into her hand. "We'll be right here when you wake up, Grandma," Emma promised, her young voice steady with determination that reminded everyone exactly where Fran's fighting spirit came from. The operating room was a carefully orchestrated symphony of medical precision. Dr. Kim's surgical team had worked together for years, each member knowing their role perfectly. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Rodriguez, had extensive experience with complex thoracic procedures. The surgical nurses had laid out instruments with meticulous care. As Fran was placed under anesthesia, Dr. Kim took a moment to center himself. This was why he'd become a surgeon, not for the routine procedures, but for moments like this when his skills could mean the difference between life and death, between a grandmother seeing her grandchildren grow up or becoming a memory. The first incision revealed the challenge they faced. The tumor, even reduced in size, had created adhesions to surrounding tissue. Dr. Kim worked with the legendary precision that had earned him his nickname, his hands moving with millimeter accuracy as he carefully separated cancerous tissue from healthy structures. Hours passed like minutes in the focused intensity of the operating room. Each step required absolute concentration. Each decision carried enormous consequences. When Dr. Kim finally located the plane between tumor and aorta, the collective held breath of his entire team was audible. "There it is," he murmured, beginning the most delicate portion of the procedure. "We're going to get this thing out of here." In the waiting room, Fran's family experienced every parent's worst nightmare. The helpless feeling of having their loved one's fate in someone else's hands, no matter how skilled those hands might be. 6 hours and 47 minutes after Fran was wheeled into surgery, the waiting room doors opened and Dr. Kim emerged, still in his surgical scrubs. The exhaustion was visible on his face, but more importantly, so was the satisfaction of a job well done. "She did beautifully," he announced to the anxious family members who had spent the entire day alternating between pacing and prayer. "The tumor is completely removed, and we were able to preserve all surrounding healthy tissue. The surgery went exactly as we hoped." The eruption of relief was immediate and overwhelming. Sarah burst into tears, David hugged his siblings, and Fran's husband simply sat down heavily, as if the weight he'd been carrying for months had finally been lifted. But Dr. Kim wasn't finished with his good news. "The tumor came out cleanly, which means we got excellent margins. What we removed will go to pathology for confirmation, but based on what I saw in there, I'm very optimistic about her prognosis." The recovery process would be challenging. Fran spent 3 days in the ICU, connected to monitors and breathing tubes, looking fragile but alive. When she finally opened her eyes and saw her family gathered around her bed, her first whispered words were, "Did he get it all?" "Every last bit," Michael assured her, squeezing her hand gently. Dr. Kim said the surgery was a complete success. Over the following weeks, Fran's recovery exceeded everyone's expectations. Her energy returned gradually, her appetite came back, and most importantly, her follow-up scans showed no signs of remaining cancer. Dr. Kim had delivered on his promise. The tumor was gone. 3 months post-surgery, Fran returned to Dr. Kim's office for her quarterly checkup. The contrast with her first visit was striking. Gone was the scared, desperate woman who had arrived hoping for a miracle. In her place sat a cancer survivor, glowing with health and renewed life. "Your scans are perfect," Dr. Kim told her, unable to hide his own satisfaction. No signs of cancer anywhere. We'll continue monitoring regularly, but Fran, you are officially in remission. The word remission hung in the air like a benediction. After everything they'd been through, the devastating diagnosis, the discouraging second opinions, the brutal chemotherapy, the risky surgery, they had achieved what 3 other doctors had said was impossible. But Dr. Kim's care didn't end with successful surgery. He connected Fran with support groups, nutritionists, and follow-up specialists who would help her maintain her health long-term. Beating cancer isn't just about removing tumors, he explained. It's about helping you live the fullest life possible afterward. As Fran left the medical center that day, she paused to look back at the building where her life had been saved. Somewhere in there, Dr. Kim was probably preparing for another impossible surgery, ready to give another family the miracle they desperately needed. Life settled into a beautiful routine for Fran and her family. Regular checkups with Dr. Kim continued showing clear scans, her energy returned completely, and she was able to resume all the activities that made life meaningful, babysitting grandchildren, traveling with her husband, and planning for the future she'd almost lost. 7 years passed in blissful, cancer-free normalcy. Fran celebrated birthdays, holidays, and milestones with the profound gratitude of someone who understood how precious each moment truly was. She often spoke about Dr. Kim as the man who gave her life back, sharing his story with anyone facing their own medical battles. Then, during a routine mammogram in 2009, doctors found something that made Fran's blood run cold, a suspicious mass in her left breast. The biopsy confirmed everyone's worst fears, breast cancer. Sitting in another oncologist's office, receiving another cancer diagnosis, Fran felt the familiar wave of terror wash over her. But this time was different. This time, she knew that cancer could be beaten. She had Dr. Kim's example of refusing to give up, and more importantly, she had her own proof that miracles were possible. The breast cancer treatment was successful, caught early and treated aggressively. But what sustained Fran through this second battle wasn't just medical treatment. It was the confidence and fighting spirit that Dr. Kim had helped instill in her during their first war against cancer. "You taught me that I'm stronger than I knew," she told Dr. Kim during a follow-up visit. "When I got the breast cancer diagnosis, instead of falling apart, I thought about how you never gave up on me. So I decided not to give up on myself." Dr. Kim smiled, recognizing the transformation he'd witnessed countless times. Patients who discovered their own inner strength through the process of fighting for their lives. "Fran, you had that strength all along. Sometimes we just need someone to help us find it." As they talked, Dr. Kim reflected on why he'd chosen medicine, and specifically why he'd dedicated his career to taking on the cases other doctors wouldn't touch. It wasn't just about surgical skill or medical knowledge. It was about this moment, seeing patients like Fran not just survive, but thrive. Today, more than a decade after her lung cancer surgery, Fran remains completely cancer-free. She has welcomed 5 additional grandchildren into the world, attended countless school plays and sporting events, and created memories that would have been lost forever if 3 doctors in Nevada had been right about her prognosis. Every family gathering includes a moment of gratitude for Dr. Kim and the medical team that refused to give up. Every birthday celebration is a reminder that life's most precious moments are often the ones we almost didn't get to experience. Dr. Kim continues his work, taking on impossible cases and giving hope to families who have run out of options, proving every day that sometimes the word impossible is just the starting point for a miracle. Today, Fran Cruz is 82 years old and surrounded by 13 grandchildren who call her the strongest person they know. Her home is filled with the laughter of family gatherings, the walls covered with photos documenting all the moments she almost didn't get to experience, graduations, weddings, first steps, and birthday celebrations that stretch across more than 2 decades since her original diagnosis. When asked about her journey, Fran always returns to the same theme: the power of refusing to accept defeat. 3 doctors told me to go home and prepare to die, she says with the quiet strength that has defined her survival. But Dr. Kim saw a woman worth fighting for, and that made all the difference. Dr. Kim continues his work at the medical center, still taking on cases that others consider impossible, still giving families hope when they've run out of options. His philosophy remains unchanged. Every patient deserves a chance, every case deserves his best effort, and sometimes miracles happen when you combine skill, determination, and the refusal to give up. The lesson of Fran's story echoes through hospital halls and treatment centers around the world, that healing requires not just medical expertise, but the human connection between doctor and patient, the belief that every life has immeasurable value, and the understanding that hope itself can be medicine. For anyone facing their own medical battle, Fran's message is simple but powerful. Don't let anyone tell you it's impossible until you've found the right person to fight alongside you. Sometimes the difference between life and death is finding someone who believes in miracles as much as you do. If this story touched your heart or gave you hope, share it with someone who needs to hear that impossible doesn't mean inevitable, and that somewhere out there is a doctor ready to fight for them too. The greatest gift isn't just surviving, it's thriving, loving, and making every day count in ways that seemed impossible when the journey began.